Jacinta.
Yeah.
A lot of time, Jake will be given the offer that he's worth because he is, he's a white privilege. And Karen most likely will also get an offer and she'll negotiate. But because of where we come from and our complacency, we're so happy to be invited. We're so comfortable with being given a seat at the table. Okay, that's a three-pronged question. So salaries, I'm going to write this down.
Salaries, positions, and raises, because they're all, I think they're all, like related to each other, one way or another.
Okay, so you've been interviewing, you've been hired, or rather you've been offered the position. A lot of the mistakes that we make is we take that very first offer. Karen and Jake, they do not accept that first offer.
Why Karen?
Why not just random names?
Why not have
a lot of times
or
Jake,
Jacinta.
Yeah. A lot of time Jake will be given the offer that he's worth because he is, he's a white privilege. And Karen most likely will also get an offer and she'll negotiate. But because of where we come from and our complacency, we're so happy to be invited. We're so comfortable with being given a seat at the table that we take whatever it is that's offered to us. If the employer wants you, if the employer finds your skill set valuable, and especially now after the 2 years we've had and the Black Lives Matter movement, you need to ride the wave. So if you're being offered an opportunity, it is to your advantage to negotiate. Now, granted, you may go back and negotiate and ask for more. They may push back and forth with you, and they may not necessarily give you exactly what you wanted, but you should never accept the first offer.
The thing, I think part of the reason why sometimes people don't go back to negotiate is that there's a fear that if I ask for a very high amount, they may take back their offer.
Well, that is a fear that I think is valid, but I don't think it's realistic. Because if you consider how long it takes an employer to put out a requisition, how long it takes for them to promote that, how many people they bring into the funnel, how many people they actually shortlist, how many people make it in front of the panel. That is weeks and weeks and weeks of people waiting on a position that has been sitting vacant, work piling. So the chances of you not getting what you want because you're fearful is really unrealistic, in my opinion. You're better off asking and being told no than not asking at all. Because if you don't ask, how are you going to know? And I think as a society, as a community, we just tend to be happy that we've been invited to the table. Like, I was offered the job, so I'm not going to ask for more money. You should ask for more money. And if they don't give you a salary that you want, you can negotiate other ways. You can ask for more paid time off. You can ask and say, well, I was kind of hoping to be at this level. Or sometimes if you have two positions that, you were applying for and one of them has come closer to the other one in terms of getting the offer, you could use that as leverage to negotiate and say, well, I've got this other opportunity that, is more lucrative, or they're willing to give me what I'm asking for. Something else that you can ask for is if they're not willing to budge on the actual gross income, you can ask for a sign-on bonus and say, well, what can you do to sweeten the deal? Can you give me an additional $5,000 as a sign-on bonus?
Now, when you talk about $5,000, how much more should you ask for? Because that's another question that comes up. Let's say, for example, I've interviewed for a position and I've been offered maybe, let's say, $80,000. Mm-hmm. So from $80,000, of course, I can't go asking for $200,000 on a position that I've been asked for 80. But how much, how do you play with these numbers to make sure that whatever you're asking for is not so unrealistic, but at the same time you're also not lowballing yourself with the
offer that you're
asking for?
Yeah. So is there a range, so to speak?
Yes, there usually is a range, and what I would suggest is before you actually go into that interview, you have to have an idea of what your market value is. So you need to do research. A lot of times people don't do that, but you need to do research. This is public information. You can go on Glassdoor, and there are very many other resources that you can be able to go to that will help you understand what people who are in your skill set in your industry are getting paid, because it also varies based on industry. Skill set may be across the board, but some industries are going to pay you more than others. Once you've got that information, then you're able to have a better sense of how much more you can push. The other question that I always encourage people who I'm working with to ask is, once you've received an offer, you can ask the recruiter, where in the quartile do I fall? a lot of times employers have what they call a quartile, which is a range of 0 to 25, 25 to 50, 50 to 75, and 75 to 100. That's essentially the broad range of where most salary bands fall under, depending on your industry and also your title. So you can ask to be given information about where in that quartile you fall under. And if you're obviously under, in the 25 range quartile, then you know that, between 0 and 25, then you're being paid at the lower end. If you're between 75 and 100, then you kind of, you may be doing well off. So that's another question to ask. Now, granted, you're not always going to get the right response depending on the industry, depending on the recruiter that you're working with. But if you do your due diligence and look at what people within the industry you're applying to and in your city are actually making, that should give you a good sense of how much more of a range you should be asking for when you're negotiating salary.
Okay. Almost fire.
This quartile one is one that I'm stuck on. Because it almost seems like, granted, I've done my math. I know what my range or what I should be getting industry-wide. But then the employer, so you're saying that this quartile is actually, it's basically what they're paying for that particular job.
What they're paying for that particular job in that particular industry in that particular company. But if you go in and you say, hey, for this particular job industry-wide, say maybe you're applying in the consultancy industry or the finance industry,
correct,
you should have a sense of how much people with your skill set are making, what employers are willing to pay for. And that's what you're going in there asking for. If they don't give you that amount of money, you can request to see what the band is. And this is, again, where a lot of people feel like, oh, my goodness, I don't want to be the problem child because I don't want to, rock the boat and have the offer rescinded. But keep in mind, these people have spent weeks and weeks trying to get you into the funnel.
Correct.
They finally like you. They've offered you the position. You can push back a little bit. You have a little bit of leeway to do that.
Okay, so you're trying to tell me that I need to know this quartile so at what point am I trying to get this information? Am I getting this information from Jump, or am I getting it at interview 2, 3?
Okay, so what I would recommend is when you go into the interview, when you get a call from the recruiter saying they're interested in you,
correct,
that's where you need to do your research. But even before then, while you're job hunting, you should know, based on the type of positions you're applying for, how much money and you're willing to jump your current role and move into a new role. And then you also need to look at the industry, because I can tell you that I'm a marketing professional. What they pay in nonprofit is not the same as what they're going to pay
correct,
in finance and what they're going to pay in tech and consulting. It varies. So you need to have an understanding of the type of employment you're seeking, and where you want to be when you want to land. And when you do speak to a recruiter, when they're screening you, you also need to have that conversation. And you say, personally, I'm not moving for $10,000, because at the end of the day, Uncle Sam is going to come and grab that money, and it's not going to feel like I made any kind of improvement in my situation. So if you know your situation, then you say to the recruiter, how can you sweeten the deal? What else can you give me that's going to make it easy for me to move?